There comes a moment in life when everything you've been ignoring rises to the surface, when the excuses no longer work, the distractions lose their appeal, and you're left face to face with the raw, uncomfortable truth you've been holding yourself back. You've been playing small, living under the weight of your own potential, convincing yourself that someday will come, that you're not ready yet, that life will somehow align perfectly before you take action. But deep down, you know that's a lie. The truth is, the biggest enemy you will ever battle is not out there in the world, it's within you. It's the weaker version of yourself, the one that thrives in comfort, feeds on fear, and survives on your silence. It's the voice in your head that whispers, "You're not enough." Or maybe tomorrow, and every time you listen to it, you shrink a little more. You give it more space. You let it dictate your choices, your pace, your worth. But let me tell you something, tomorrow doesn't belong to the weak. It belongs to the bold. You were not born for this smallness. You weren't placed on this earth to live safely inside a shell built by your own insecurities. You were made for growth, for impact, for greatness, and that greatness will never be reached if you keep allowing the weak version of you to drive the wheel. That version of you doesn't want progress. It wants comfort. It wants familiarity. It wants you to stay exactly where you are, because that's where it feels safe. And the longer you stay there, the more you forget who you really are. You stop dreaming. You stop striving. You forget that you were once a force, ambitious, bold, relentless. But the fire doesn't die. It dims. It waits. It watches for the day you finally say, enough. And that day must be now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when the timing feels right, because that moment will never come. The perfect time is a myth, a trap, a lie, told by the weaker self to keep you frozen. You have to create your moment. You have to draw your line in the sand and decide that from this moment forward, you are no longer entertaining weakness, no longer making room for self-doubt, no longer being controlled by the fear of failure or judgment or imperfection. This is your turning point, and it won't come gently. It will come with resistance, with discomfort, with a voice in your head begging you to return to the familiar, but you must ignore that voice. You must silence it with action. You must stand in front of that version of yourself, the one who avoids challenges, delays, dreams, and settles for less, and say, your time is up. Because this life is not for the timid. It is not for those who live and die in hesitation. It belongs to the bold. It belongs to the committed. It belongs to those who decide right now to kill that weak version of themselves and rise into who they were always meant to become. And if that's the decision you've made, then the first step is this. You need to know exactly what you're up against, because you can't defeat what you won't acknowledge. You can't slay a ghost you refuse to name. You can't rise until you admit what's been dragging you down. So stop pretending. Stop dressing it up. Stop calling it bad timing or just how you are. Let's get to the truth. Let's name the enemy. Transformation begins the moment you stop pretending that everything is fine. It begins the second you call yourself out with brutal honesty and strip away every mask you've worn to hide your fears. Most people spend their entire lives in denial, convincing themselves that they're doing okay while quietly drowning in stagnation. But the truth is, you cannot conquer what you refuse to confront. You cannot fix what you won't admit is broken. The weak version of you survives because you've been too afraid to name it, too afraid to look in the mirror and say, this is my flaw, this is my fear, this is my excuse. But until you do, nothing will change. Denial is the silent killer of progress. It keeps you blind, keeps you passive, keeps you stuck in a life that looks full on the outside, but feels empty inside. So let's get real. What's holding you back? Is it procrastination? Is it self-doubt? Is it fear of failure, of rejection, of not being good enough? Be specific. Be ruthless. Don't sugarcoat it. Give it a name, because when you name it, you expose it. And what you expose, you take power over. Every excuse you've clung to, I don't have time, I'm too tired, it's not the right moment. Every single one of them is fuel for the weak version of yourself. And the longer you feed those lies, the stronger they become. But here's the truth. Every champion you admire, every person who has ever broken through and built something powerful out of nothing, they didn't have perfect circumstances. They didn't wait for permission. They simply refused to let excuses define their lives. Excuses are easy. Accountability is hard. But accountability is where your power lives. Because the moment you stop blaming the world, your job, your past, your environment, your upbringing, is the moment you take back the pen and start rewriting your own story. Life will throw curveballs. People will disappoint you. Obstacles will show up uninvited. But your reaction to them, your mindset, is what determines everything. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are a product of your choices. And when you own that truth, no one and nothing can control your future but you. This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about rising up. It's about taking full responsibility for where you are without shame and using that awareness as fuel to grow. Weakness multiplies in silence. It feeds on avoidance. But strength begins the moment you say, "This is mine to fix. And I'm done waiting for someone else to do it for me." Because no one is coming to save you. No one is going to do the work for you. This fight is yours and yours alone. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you step into the power you've been giving away for far too long. And once you accept that truth, once you stop lying to yourself, stop blaming, stop waiting, there's only one thing left to do: decide. That's where everything changes. That's where you stop playing small and finally draw the line in the sand. There comes a point where thinking about change isn't enough, where talking about potential no longer satisfies the soul. You reach that breaking point, the sacred, terrifying, liberating moment where you stop entertaining the idea of change and start demanding it. Not from the world, not from others, but from yourself. And that moment, that internal declaration, is where everything begins. Because nothing in your life will shift until you make a decision, not a vague intention or a hopeful wish, but a firm, relentless, non-negotiable decision that says, "This ends now." The weak version of you survives because it knows you're indecisive. It knows you flirt with growth but never commit. It feeds off your half-hearted attempts and your endless rationalizations. It's comfortable because it sees that you haven't fully drawn the line yet. You tiptoe around your potential, dipping a toe in the waters of greatness, then retreating back into your comfort zone when the waves get too high. But hear this: growth doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Greatness doesn't knock softly. You have to claim it, and that claim begins with a choice, a real one. So decide that you've had enough of mediocrity, enough of playing small, enough of knowing deep inside that you were meant for more but continuing to live like you're not. That one decision to draw a line in the sand and say, "I will no longer tolerate this version of me," is more powerful than any motivational speech, any vision board, any dream you've scribbled in a notebook. Because decisions backed by action are the foundation of transformation. And when you truly commit something inside, you shift. Your language changes. Your habits begin to align. You stop waiting for motivation and start operating from conviction. This is not about proving anything to anyone else. This is about the person you see in the mirror, the only competition that ever mattered. The moment you decide to rise, the weak version of you starts to panic. It will throw everything at you: old fears, past failures, every reason why you should quit or postpone or wait for someday. But you won't. Because once the decision is made, your next step is clear. You execute. Not perfectly, not without fear, but relentlessly, day after day, no matter how you feel. You do the work because you've already decided that this is who you are now. From this moment on, you are no longer the person who waits. You are the person who acts. You are no longer the person who negotiates with fear or makes excuses for why it's not the right time. You are the person who gets it done, who shows up when it's hard, who chooses growth over comfort, who refuses to back down from the version of themselves they are becoming. You don't just want change anymore. You are changed. And the weak version of you, it doesn't stand a chance, not when you finally make the decision to become unstoppable. But decisions are just the beginning. The next test, the one that separates the committed from the comfortable, is fear. Because the moment you draw that line, fear will show up. And it won't knock. It'll try to break the door down. That's why the next move is this: step through fear. Don't wait for it to go away. Fear isn't the enemy, it's the test. And the weak version of you, it feeds on fear like oxygen. It thrives in hesitation, grows stronger in your silence, and multiplies every time you let it decide what you won't do. Fear is the most deceptive voice in your life because it doesn't scream, it whispers. It pretends to protect you, to keep you safe, to help you wait for the right moment, but in reality, it keeps you small. And as long as you let fear call the shots, you will stay exactly where you are, stuck in your comfort zone, paralyzed by invisible chains, watching others live the life you know you're capable of, but don't have the courage to reach for. The weak version of you wants you to believe that you have to feel brave before you act, but that's a lie. You don't conquer fear by waiting for it to vanish. You conquer fear by moving anyway. You feel the resistance, the shaking hands, the racing heart, and you do it anyway. Because action is the antidote. Movement shatters the illusion. Fear can only survive in imagination and delay in the space between who you are and what you could be. But the moment you take a step, any step, you weaken its grip. You expose it for what it is. Noise, fiction, nothing more than stories you've told yourself for far too long. Don't wait for fear to fade. It won't. You don't need it to disappear. You need to decide that it no longer gets to drive. Step into it. Run toward the thing that makes you nervous. Say yes when everything in you wants to hide. Speak up when silence feels safer. Apply when doubt says you're not ready. Every time you move through fear, you become less like the version of yourself that hesitated and more like the version that wins. Because fear doesn't disappear with time, it dies with action. It shrinks when you shine light on it. It dissolves when you stop feeding it your energy, your time, your identity. Your comfort zone, no matter how familiar, is the breeding ground of the weak self. It feels safe there, but nothing grows there. The future you crave is waiting on the other side of discomfort, and the only toll required is courage. Fear thrives on worst-case scenarios, on what-ifs and imagined disasters. But what if you flipped the script? What if you trained your mind to focus on what could go right? What if the door you're scared to open holds the breakthrough you've been waiting for? Start asking yourself the opposite questions. What if this changes everything? What if this time you don't fail? What if this is exactly the moment your life begins to shift? Surround yourself with courage, with people who challenge you to be bold, with stories of those who faced fear and won, because courage is contagious. When you see others break through, you stop believing that fear has to define you. You realize that fear is not a wall, it's a door. And doors were made to be opened. The weak version of you will beg you to retreat, to quit, to take the easier path. But every time you push past fear, even by an inch, you crush that voice just a little more. You reclaim power. You reclaim your future. If you keep feeding fear, it will eat you alive. But the moment you starve it with action, confidence, and consistency, it loses its grip. And in that space where fear once ruled, strength is born. This is how you kill fear. And when fear dies, the weak version of you dies with it. But don't stop there, because fear isn't the only thing. Shaping you, your environment is too. You can't fight for transformation while surrounding yourself with the very energy that built your limitations. You faced the fear, now it's time to face your circle. Because growth doesn't happen in a vacuum, and you don't rise in isolation. Growth isn't something you achieve alone in the dark. Who you surround yourself with determines what you normalize, what you tolerate, and ultimately who you become. If you're constantly around people who complain, make excuses, and accept mediocrity, don't be surprised when you begin to mirror their mindset. The weak version of you thrives in that environment because mediocrity feels comfortable when everyone around you is bathing in it. It doesn't challenge you there. It feels safe, accepted, unthreatened. But here's the truth. You cannot build a powerful life in a powerless circle. If you want to kill the weak version of yourself, you have to raise your standards. And that starts by raising the standards of who you spend your time with. Strong people don't waste time talking about what they might do, they do it. They hold themselves accountable. They chase growth relentlessly. They stretch beyond comfort and demand excellence from themselves, and being around them forces you to do the same. Their discipline becomes contagious. Their hunger ignites something in you. You begin to see what's possible not as theory, but as reality because you're witnessing it up close. Take a hard look around you. Are the people in your life lifting you higher or quietly dragging you down? Do they challenge your complacency or do they reinforce it? Do they encourage growth or do they enable stagnation? If the answer isn't pushing you forward, it's pulling you back, and it's time to make cuts. Because here's the thing, you don't owe anyone your potential. You don't owe loyalty to relationships that keep you small. Weakness loves attachment to the wrong people, but strength demands alignment. And alignment means making difficult choices. Sometimes it means walking away from circles that no longer reflect your vision, not out of arrogance, but out of purpose. That's not betrayal, that's evolution. And evolution requires intention. Being around stronger people doesn't mean you compete with them, it means you learn from them. Study how they think, how they move, how they respond when life punches them in the mouth. Absorb their mindset like oxygen and apply it like fuel. Their growth becomes a mirror of what's possible for you, but only if you're willing to step into that room and stay there. Yes, upgrading your circle might be uncomfortable. You might feel like the least experienced, the least prepared, the least qualified person at the table. Good. Stay there. That's where growth lives. Because you don't become better by staying the best in a room full of small minds. You grow by putting yourself around people who intimidate you not with ego, but with excellence. That discomfort, that's your edge sharpening. So don't let guilt keep you in circles you've outgrown. The weak version of you will fear being judged for changing, but the strong version of you is focused on evolving. Let people say what they want. Let them misunderstand you. Let them fall away. Growth isn't about keeping everyone, it's about keeping aligned. Seek out mentors, seek out coaches, seek out role models who live where you want to go. Borrow their belief until you build your own. Because when your circle shifts, your standard shifts. And when your standard shifts, your life transforms. Weakness cannot survive in a room full of people who demand strength. The old, you won't make it in that room. And that's exactly the point. Every step you take with the right people beside you is another nail in the coffin of the weak version of you. Elevate your circle and you elevate your identity. Change your environment and you change your destiny. But even in the right environment without one key force, you'll still stay stuck. Because proximity to greatness means nothing if you don't show up for yourself. And that's where the real work begins. It's time to master the one thing that separates the committed from the curious: discipline. Discipline isn't a tactic. It's not a motivational boost, a productivity hack, or something you rely on when it's convenient. Discipline is a weapon. And when wielded consistently, it becomes the most powerful force you possess. The weak version of you. It crumbles under pressure. It skips workouts, it sleeps in, it procrastinates, it reaches for comfort every time progress demands discomfort. It's addicted to short-term pleasure, allergic to effort, and obsessed with how it feels. But the strong version of you, The one you're building now doesn't take orders from emotions. It moves on commitment. And discipline is that commitment in action. Here's the hard truth most won't tell you: motivation is unreliable. It shows up when it wants, disappears when you need it most. But discipline doesn't care how you feel. Discipline doesn't negotiate. It's waking up at 5 a.m. Not because it's easy, but because your goals demand it. It's choosing your priorities over distractions day after day, even when no one's watching. It's doing the work when you're tired, uninspired, sore, or overwhelmed, because the mission doesn't pause for your mood. Discipline is not about perfection, it's about consistency. It's not about massive overhauls. It's about doing the small things daily, even when they seem insignificant. Reading for 15 minutes, training for 30, planning your day, saying no when everyone else says yes. These actions might seem minor, but repeated with discipline, they stack, they build momentum, and eventually they become who you are. Not something you do, but your identity. And identity is the battlefield where the weak version of you dies. Because weakness thrives in chaos, in randomness, in "I'll do it tomorrow." But when you build structure, when you commit to a rhythm, when you stop letting how you feel dictate what you do, you strip the weakness of its power. Every time you choose discipline, you're making a declaration: I am in control. Not my excuses, not my impulses, me. So build your system. Create a routine that supports the future you. Maybe it's a morning ritual, a daily workout, an evening reflection. It doesn't matter how simple it starts. What matters is that it becomes non-negotiable, because structure kills excuses. Structure is accountability, and accountability is freedom. There will be days when you want to quit, when it feels pointless, when your mind screams for ease. That's where discipline shows up, not as a feeling, but as a force. And the more you honor that force, the more powerful you become. Not just externally, but internally, because every act of discipline builds something deeper: self-respect. Confidence doesn't come from hype. It comes from knowing that you can trust yourself to show up no matter what. Discipline is what separates the dreamers from the doers. The weak version of you lives in dreams, wishes someday, maybe plans. The disciplined version of you lives in action, execution, reality. You want to kill the weak version of yourself, then stop negotiating with it. Stop giving it time, space, or sympathy. Replace it with consistency. Replace it with structure. Replace it with decisions that scream, "This is who I am now." Because when discipline becomes your standard, weakness has nowhere left to hide. And yet even discipline demands a battlefield, a space where it lives, breathes, and proves itself daily. That battlefield, it's your time. The strongest version of you doesn't just train harder, it manages time better. So if you're serious about killing the weak version of yourself, then the next move is non-negotiable. Own your time. Ruthlessly, relentlessly, completely. Time is the most ruthless currency you'll ever handle. Once it's spent, it's gone. You don't get to recycle it, stretch it, or borrow more of it. And yet the weak version of you spends time like it's endless. It pours it into scrolling, into gossip, into mindless television, into anything that numbs the discomfort of progress. The weak you is an expert in procrastination, in distraction, in avoidance, disguised as busyness. But the strong version of you, that version treats time like life, because that's exactly what it is. And if you want to kill the weak version of yourself, it starts with how you manage the hours you've been given. You don't rise by accident, you rise by design. You command your day, or your day commands you. That's the brutal divide between the average and the elite. Weakness waits to see how the day unfolds. Strength dictates it. Weakness lets the day get hijacked by emotion, impulse, and other people's priorities. Strength starts with intention, clarity, purpose. If you wake up and you don't know what matters most, you've already lost half the battle. You need to start auditing your time like your life depends on it, because it does. What are you giving hours that gives you nothing back? What apps, what people, what habits are bleeding your potential dry without a return? Cut them. Cut them without apology. Cut them without hesitation. Your goals don't have room for time thieves. Every yes you say to something meaningless is a no to the life you're trying to build. The weak version of you says yes to everything out of guilt, fear, or habit. The strong version says no strategically, boldly, unapologetically. Say no to the extra drink. Say no to the gossip-filled conversation. Say no to the relationship that drains your focus. Say no to the 5-minute scroll that becomes an hour of lost fire. You are not here to waste time. You are here to own it. Build your schedule around your mission, not your moods. Plan with purpose. Set priorities that scream, "This is who I am becoming." Wake up every day with a blueprint, not to be busy, but to be effective. Discipline gives you the power to own your time, but structure keeps it alive. Build a routine that protects your focus. Morning rituals, deep work blocks, tech-free hours. Whatever it takes to create a container for your greatness, because chaos is weakness's favorite playground. The weak version of you thrives in disorder. It gives it room to make excuses, to avoid decisions, to stay distracted. But structure suffocates that chaos. It removes the gray area. It says, this is what's happening today, period. You want to get ahead, then stop managing time and start commanding it. Ask yourself every hour, is this moving me forward? If the answer is no, eliminate it. Protect your hours like a savage, because every minute is either sharpening your edge or dulling your purpose. And when you start living with that kind of urgency, real urgency, you start to separate. You stop competing with others and start competing with who you were yesterday. You begin to move with clarity, with precision, with unstoppable momentum. You don't kill the weak version of yourself by simply wanting more time. You kill it by owning every moment you already have. You kill it by refusing to let your time be dictated by weakness, noise, or distraction. You kill it by becoming so intentional that every hour you live is aligned with who you're becoming. Because when you own your time, you own your life, and the weak version of you, it cannot survive in a life that's built with purpose. However, everything you've done, every decision, every step through fear, every act of discipline, every moment of owning your time, it all collapses without one thing: consistency. You don't rise because of what you do once. You rise because of what you do repeatedly. The weak version of you shows up when it feels good, when the conditions are perfect, when motivation is high. It lives in bursts. It starts strong, fades fast, and leaves you empty. But the strong version of you, that version doesn't need hype. It doesn't wait for permission. It shows up anyway. Consistency is the silent killer of weakness. It's the daily punch that never stops landing. It's the grind that says, no matter what happens, I'm here. I'm doing the work. Not because it's glamorous, not because anyone's watching, but because it's who you've become. The weak version of you needs quick wins and instant results, but the strong version knows success is built brick by brick, day after day, long after the mood to continue has left. And here's what most people don't understand: consistency isn't hard because of the task. It's hard because of boredom, because it's not flashy, it's not sexy, it's not exciting to wake up and repeat. But that repetition is where greatness lives. Every time you do the hard thing again, every time you show up when no one claps, when no one sees, when it's raining, when it's late, when you're tired, that's when your foundation becomes unshakable. That's when your identity changes. You want confidence. Don't look for it in affirmations. Build it through action. Every time you follow through, you prove to yourself that you are who you said you are. That's real self-respect. And self-respect creates momentum that no external motivation ever could. That momentum compounds. That's when people start asking, how are you so disciplined? But it's not discipline anymore. It's who you are now. So choose one thing, just one, and master it. Not for a day, not for a week, forever. Commit to it relentlessly. Let it anchor you. Let it be the daily non-negotiable that separates you from who you used to be. Because when you live with consistency, the old you, weak, fragile, inconsistent, gets starved out. It doesn't survive in structure. It doesn't survive in standards. It doesn't survive when you don't miss. And the greatest part, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to sprint. You just need to refuse to stop, because consistency beats intensity when intensity burns out. The world is full of people who had a good week, a good month, a good start. Be the one who never left. Be the one who's still going when they quit, still rising when they fell, still building when they lost focus, because that's who you are now. Not someone who dabbles, not someone who wishes, but someone who executes, someone who keeps promises to the mission, and most importantly, to themselves. The weak version of you, it's gone now. It died the moment you decided to show up again. And from here on out, you don't go back. You build, you rise, you become. You don't need anyone's permission to chase your dreams. You don't need a green light, a round of applause, or someone's validation to move forward. All you need is to begin right now. Waiting for the perfect moment is a masterful illusion, the greatest trap the weak version of yourself ever created. It convinces you that tomorrow will be better, that someday you'll feel ready, that eventually everything will align. But here's the truth. There is no perfect time. There never has been. There never will be. The stars won't magically line up. Conditions will rarely be ideal. The world won't suddenly pause to make room for your greatness. And that's exactly why the strong version of you doesn't wait, it acts. Now, in the middle of the chaos, in the face of fear, in spite of doubt, the weak version of you needs approval. It seeks safety in the opinions of others, needing reassurance before taking the leap. But understand this, most people won't see your vision because they were never meant to. Stop looking for permission from those who would rather play it safe. Their approval is not your oxygen. Their belief is not a requirement. The strong version of you stays locked in focus, driven, unbothered by outside noise. It doesn't flinch at criticism or retreat at resistance, because it understands one powerful truth. You were never supposed to fit in. You were meant to rise. Take full ownership of your life. Stop blaming circumstances, bad luck, or the people around you. The weak version of you leans on excuses like crutches, waiting for external conditions to change. But the strong version of you, it grabs the wheel. It creates opportunity. It doesn't wait for the green light. It realizes the light has always been green. It was never red. You were just hesitating. You were just afraid. You were just listening to a voice that wasn't yours. But no more. It's time to press the pedal and move forward with ruthless intention. When you stop waiting for permission, something powerful happens. You break free. The limitations start falling away. The excuses lose their grip, because the truth is, permission isn't granted, it's claimed. It's ripped from the hands of fear, doubt, and hesitation by a person who refuses to be passive 1 second longer. Take yours and never look back. The weak version of you thrives in comfort and predictability. It loves the idea of control, but never embraces the risk of action. It finds shelter in routines that keep you stagnant, not structured. It finds refuge in ease, but ease is a liar. Comfort is a trap. And growth demands war with what's comfortable. If you want to kill the weak version of yourself, you need to wage that war daily. You need to challenge yourself on purpose. You need to seek discomfort like a soldier trains for battle. You don't have to start with grand gestures. Start where you are, but speak up in that meeting. Sign up for that class. Send that message. Take that cold shower. Put yourself in situations that stretch you. Discomfort isn't punishment, it's preparation. Every time you lean into it, you rewire your mind to see challenge not as a threat, but as a signal that you're on the edge of something powerful. The weak version of you fears failure, but failure is just a mirror showing you what still needs work. The strong version of you embraces that reflection because it's honest, it's brutal, and it's how you grow. You will fall, you will mess up, but every time you do, you collect data, wisdom, and grit. That's what the weak version of you will never understand. That confidence doesn't come from avoiding the fire. It comes from walking through it and realizing it didn't burn you. It forged you. So stop waiting. Stop hiding. Stop hoping that someone out there is going to grant you the power you already possess. It's yours. You just have to claim it with action. The strong version of you is already inside. You don't have to find it. You just have to unleash it. Because the life you want will never meet you in comfort. It waits in the stretch, the strain, the sweat. And if you're ready to rise, you must be ready to embrace discomfort deeply, consistently, deliberately. Discomfort is not your enemy. It's your greatest teacher. The weak version of you will do anything to avoid it. It hides in routines, clings to predictability, and wraps itself in the warm blanket of easy. It tells you to stay in the shallow end, to keep things familiar, to avoid rocking the boat. But listen closely, nothing great has ever been built in comfort. Growth doesn't live in the familiar, it lives in the stretch. It lives in the places that make your palms sweat, your heart race, and your stomach tighten. It lives in the conversations you're afraid to have, the challenges you think you might fail, and the actions you keep postponing because they're uncomfortable. The strong version of you doesn't run from those places. It runs toward them. Every single day, you have a choice to feed your fear or to fuel your growth. Start small if you must. Take a cold shower. Say the thing you've been holding back. Try the new skill that scares you. Speak when you normally stay quiet. These small acts of courage stack up. They don't just build strength, they build identity. Discomfort is the gym for your mind. Every rep you do, every moment you choose growth over ease, you're becoming stronger, sharper, more dangerous to your doubts. The weak version of you fears failure, but the strong version knows that failure is just feedback, a necessary part of becoming who you're meant to be. It's not a wall, it's a step. When you stumble, learn. When you fall, rise faster. When it hurts, lean in. Because the pain of discomfort is temporary, but the regret of staying the same is forever. Understand this. The weak version of you is not lazy, it's comfortable. And that comfort is costing you your edge, your fire, your evolution. You don't need to be extreme. You just need to be consistent. Make discomfort your daily companion, and it will introduce you to the version of yourself you've never met, the one who's fearless, focused, and forged by fire. So today, do the hard thing, and tomorrow, do another. Because when discomfort becomes a habit, mediocrity becomes impossible. The weak version of you cannot survive in a life built on challenge, and that's the point. You're not here to survive, you're here to rise. But there's one more silent killer left, one that sneaks in when you're tired, doubting, scrolling, comparison. It doesn't always hit you like a hammer. Sometimes it seeps in quietly, scrolling post after post, story after story. 1 minute you're feeling fine. Next you're wondering why you're not further ahead. Why don't you look like them, succeed like them, win like them? That's how the weak version of you thrives, by convincing you that you're already behind. But let me say this clearly, you are not late, you are not less, you are on your path. And no one else has walked it, suffered through it, or sacrificed for it the way you have. The weak version of you uses comparison to justify inaction. It says, why try? They're already better. It makes excuses wrapped in envy. It looks at someone else's chapter 20 and uses it as a reason to quit in your chapter 2. But the strong version of you, it knows better. The strong version doesn't get jealous, it gets curious. It studies, it learns, it adapts. It uses the success of others as fuel, not friction. Because it understands someone else winning doesn't mean you're losing. It just means winning is possible. You were not built to fit someone else's mold. You were built to shatter your own limits. Social media is a highlight reel, not real life. You're comparing your behind-the-scenes grind to someone else's curated masterpiece. That's not fair, and more importantly, it's not useful. Your journey is sacred. It's tailored to your mission, your pain, your resilience, and the only person you should ever compete with is the one staring back at you in the mirror. Did you get better today? Did you show up? Did you grow? That's the scoreboard that matters. Every time you celebrate someone else, you weaken the grip of envy. Every time you redirect your focus to your own progress, you starve the weak version of its favorite weapon, insecurity. Comparaison crée stress. Growth creates peace. Remember, real confidence doesn't come from measuring how far ahead you are of others. It comes from knowing how far you've come from where you started. So kill the comparison. Own your path. Focus on your next step, not someone else's destination. And trust that every single move forward is you evolving into the person you were born to be. Because when you lock in on your own lane, there is no competition. There is only progress. And the weak version of you, it doesn't survive in that clarity. It fades quietly and permanently. Being unstoppable doesn't mean you never fall. It means you never stay down. The weak version of you gives up the moment things get uncomfortable, when the path gets hard, when the results are slow, when failure knocks at the door. It throws in the towel and calls it fate. But the strong version of you, it refuses to quit no matter what. You want to know what separates the average from the extraordinary. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's not having perfect conditions. It's the refusal to quit when everything in you screams to stop. It's the decision to show up when you're tired, when you're doubting yourself, when the excuses feel louder than your vision. Unstoppable people have made peace with the pain of progress. They know every step forward costs something: comfort, ease, approval, but the reward is worth it. They don't need permission, applause, or a safety net. They build momentum through discipline and grit, not through bursts of motivation. To become unstoppable, you must build a mindset that doesn't settle. The weak version of you is satisfied with good enough. It looks for a finish line, for a break, for the easy road. But the strong version, it asks, what's next? It stays hungry. It pushes deeper. It doesn't settle for yesterday's success when there's still more to give. You need to eliminate every excuse from your vocabulary. No more. I can't. No more. Maybe later. No more blaming time, circumstances, or people. You want it, then do what it takes. The strong version of you finds solutions, not reasons to quit. When you hit resistance, keep going. When you fail, get back up. When it's hard, especially when it's hard, push harder. Being unstoppable is a choice, a decision you make every single day. It's a decision to become someone who is no longer available for giving up. Someone who gets knocked down 10 times and stands up 11. Surround yourself with that energy. Get around people who don't quit, who show you what's possible when you commit fully. Let their fire light yours. Look in the mirror and make a vow to yourself: no matter what happens, I don't stop. I keep going. Because here's the truth: the weak version of you can't survive in the presence of relentless action. When you become unstoppable, that weak voice fades, silenced by the sound of footsteps moving forward. Forward into growth, into power, into purpose. This is the mindset that changes everything. This is it. This is the moment you stop reading and start rising. The moment you stop collecting words and start becoming the force they've been calling out of you. You've met the weak version of yourself in every excuse, every delay, every fear. You've danced with it long enough. You've listened to its lies, let it hold the wheel, let it dim your fire. but now you know better. And when you know better, you do better. You've been given the blueprint, the challenge, the call to arms. Now it's time to choose. No one's coming to save you. There's no secret formula, no shortcut, no permission slip. There's only you and the decision to become unbreakable. And that decision, it's made in the fire, in the reps you don't want to do, in the alarm you don't want to hear, in the fears you finally face, in the choices you make when no one's watching. Every moment from here on out is a chance to rise, to kill the old version, to step into power, to walk with purpose, to live with fire. You weren't born to be average. You weren't built to be small. You were made to become a weapon, sharp, disciplined, unshakable. So decide, commit, act. Because if you don't kill the weak version of yourself, it will kill every dream you've ever had. And that is no longer an option. Now go. The future is watching, and it's waiting for the strongest version of you to show up. So go boldly, go relentlessly, and never look back.